Welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive Mythology on Deadscape Diaries. Today, we're unraveling one of the most captivating and terrifying stories from Greek mythology, the tale of Medusa and her Gorgon sisters, Stheno and Euryale. These legendary women have haunted the collective imagination for centuries, evolving from ancient myths to symbols of power, rage, and tragic transformation. But what was the true story behind their curse? How did Medusa go from a beautiful mortal to a monster with a petrifying gaze? And what impact have these terrifying figures had on modern-day culture? Let's dive into the dark origins of these mythological women and their lasting legacy. In Greek mythology, Medusa and her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, are part of a terrifying trio known as the Gorgons. They were the daughters of Phorcys and Ceto, two ancient sea gods who were often depicted as monstrous beings themselves. While Stheno and Euryale were immortal, Medusa was a mortal woman, and therein lies the root of her tragic tale. Medusa's story begins with her beauty. She was once known for her stunning looks, with golden hair and features so exquisite that even the gods couldn't help but admire her. In fact, it was her beauty that attracted the attention of the god Poseidon. According to most versions of the myth, Poseidon became infatuated with Medusa and pursued her relentlessly, eventually assaulting her in the temple of Athena. This act of violence, however, would mark the beginning of Medusa's transformation. When Athena discovered what had happened in her sacred temple, she was enraged, not with Poseidon, but with Medusa herself. In some versions of the myth, Athena blamed Medusa for provoking Poseidon's advances, while in others, the goddess simply punished Medusa for desecrating her temple. As a result, Athena cursed Medusa, turning her beautiful hair into writhing snakes and giving her a gaze that could turn anyone who looked at her into stone. The curse completely altered Medusa's fate. No longer the beautiful maiden she once was, she became a hideous monster, feared and shunned by all. As for her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, they remained immortal and continued to live in their remote lair, which Medusa would eventually retreat to in isolation. The most well-known aspect of Medusa's curse is her petrifying gaze. Anyone who looked directly into her eyes would be turned to stone, frozen in place for eternity. This ability was a direct consequence of Athena's wrath, and it turned Medusa from a victim into a weapon. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, also shared in their terrifying powers. While Medusa's curse was most often depicted as the ability to turn people to stone, Stheno and Euryale had their own monstrous traits. Stheno, the eldest, was particularly noted for her extreme strength and violence. Euryale, while immortal and just as fearsome, was depicted as a more unpredictable figure, sometimes associated with an unearthly wail that could strike fear into her enemies. Together, the three sisters lived in isolation, feared by mortals and gods alike. However, it was Medusa who became the most infamous of the Gorgons, her cursed form symbolizing vengeance, isolation, and the consequences of divine wrath. Her story would become one of the most recognizable in all of Greek mythology. Medusa's story takes a dramatic turn when the hero Perseus is tasked with slaying her. In one of the most iconic myths of Greek mythology, Perseus is sent on a quest by King Polydectes to retrieve Medusa's head. Armed with gifts from the gods, including a shield from Athena and a sword from Hermes, Perseus sets off to find the Gorgon's lair. Using the reflection in his polished shield to avoid looking directly at Medusa, Perseus is able to approach her without being turned to stone. With a single stroke of his sword, he decapitates Medusa, and from her blood springs the legendary Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant. Perseus would later use Medusa's severed head as a weapon, turning his enemies to stone. Eventually, Medusa's head would be given to Athena, who placed it on her shield, the Aegis, as a symbol of protection. The tragic death of Medusa is a defining moment in Greek mythology, symbolizing both the victory of the hero and the downfall of the monster, though Medusa's death also serves as a reminder of the injustices she suffered. The figure of Medusa has evolved over the centuries, taking on different meanings in various cultural contexts. In ancient Greece, Medusa was often seen as a symbol of danger, a monster to be feared and avoided. However, as time went on, Medusa's story has been reinterpreted and reimagined, turning her from a villain into a symbol of empowerment and resistance. In modern times, Medusa has been embraced as a symbol of feminist strength, representing a woman who is punished for her beauty and her victimization at the hands of the gods. Her curse, often seen as a metaphor for trauma, is now understood by many as a symbol of the silencing and objectification of women. The idea that Medusa's gaze could petrify her enemies has also come to symbolize the power of reclaiming one's own agency, where the once victimized Medusa now holds power over her would-be aggressors. Medusa's legacy also extends into the arts, literature, and pop culture. From the famous Medusa paintings by artists like Caravaggio, to her appearance in modern films like Clash of the Titans and Wonder Woman, Medusa continues to captivate audiences. She has become a cultural icon, her image appearing in everything from jewelry to tattoos, often as a symbol of power, protection, and defiance. The story of Medusa and her Gorgon sisters is a tragic yet empowering myth that continues to resonate today. What was once the tale of a beautiful woman cursed by the gods has transformed into a story of survival, vengeance, and reclaiming one's identity. Medusa's gaze, once a symbol of fear, is now one of defiance, reminding us that those who are misunderstood and cast aside may still hold immense power. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the myth of Medusa and the Gorgon sisters. If you enjoyed this exploration of one of mythology's most iconic figures, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay curious, and never let the myths fade into the shadows.